Before history is written, it's played. Before it's frozen in time, it's fought one shift at a time. Before it's etched in silver, it's carved in ice. What happens next will last forever. The Stanley Cup Final on ABC and ESPN Plus begins Saturday.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transfer Show here on Anfield Index. And of course, that means I'm joined by Mr. Dave Davis to talk about the latest stories, rumours, and give you as much information as we possibly can, with the caveat, as always, that we only know what we know. How are you, Dave?
Yeah, excited, mate. That very much the transfer window officially opens on Friday, doesn't it? Like the Euro starts, stuff ramping up, but like you said, we only know what we know. We only know what we've been told. Boy, just to check out through it all.
Now, can we just address something right at the start? Because a lot of people are getting their undergarments in a terrible bunch altogether about the lack of Arne Slot interviews and FaceTime with cameras. And it's all getting a little bit stressed in terms of some of the feedback I'm hearing from people. And of course, then there was the line that we saw doing the rounds about how people who are waiting to hear about transfers, despite the fact, as you said, the window doesn't open until Friday, are really throwing the toys out of the pram, because the line was there'll be no talk of transfers or contracts or anything like that until we talk to the main man himself, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. Can you clarify for people, because I think you've already spoken about this with David Lynch, just exactly what the situation is as regards what's going on with Slot, as in why it is that people haven't heard from him, because they don't seem to understand what's going on.
Yeah, you're right. People are getting in a bit of a tiz-was, as it were, about it. It's pretty simple, Trev. The information is that Arne Slot is on holiday. He's enjoying a break from the troubles and the travails around Feyenoord, and obviously before he steps into the big job. Because let's be honest, very soon his life is about to be turned upside down completely, with everything that Liverpool job entails. So it's nothing kind of sinister, smoke and mirrors. He's just on holiday is pretty much the information that David Lynch was talking us through today. But you're right, that kind of, he has to come back. I mean, all we know for definite, David Lynch was honest about this, said, we don't have a date in the diary before people are speculating on that for a press conference for him either. So before anyone starts like, what day is it when it will take place? There's nothing in the diary. We know it's got to be before the 1st of July because that's when he starts pre-season. But other than that, it's kind of whether people like it or not, it's just have to wait and see when it is. But you're right, Trev. There's a lot of stressing considering the window's not even open. Do you know what I mean? How much can realistically happen at the moment? Like, if you're going to get stressed out, at least give it time till the end of the window. We've not got the targets you want today. Let's wait till then.
Yeah, I mean, it's you would imagine people might want to have a little bit of a palate cleanser in terms of a period of time, downtime perhaps, and the old Arne's holidays is kind of perfectly appropriate, especially given the opening of the transfer window on Friday. But of course, that's just not going to cut it for people who are impatient. I do get it, actually, because I was one of those who was very much on the let's not be too sentimental about all this Klopp stuff bandwagon. Let's get started with the new thing. I was kind of in that camp, but I do understand that point of view. But as you say, getting unnecessarily excited about it, considering the context of a man on holidays and a transfer window not open, seems a bit daft. It is the local patch journals who are going to be leading a lot of our stories when it comes to Liverpool related shenanigans, because not necessarily all in a good way. Brace yourselves, folks, if you're a little bit sensitive to the hopes and dreams being perhaps a little bit quashed in regard to some of the stories. But we'll start off with two Liverpool assets that we know the club is probably looking to offload. One of them, well, both of them have pretty much spoken in comparatively unveiled terms about how they'd like to get away. One a lot more, shall we say, club-friendly in his way of approaching than the other. We're talking, of course, of Sepp Vandenberg, and we're talking about Queeveen Kelleher, and there are reports about both. And the price tag, which seemed to really upset young Sepp, it also continues to be an ongoing factor in this story for both of these youngish men, in terms of whether or not the club are going to be able to offload them, and the rate at which, the financial rate at which they want to offload them. What do we know about what's happening there with the wranglings?
Yeah, the 20 million is your magic figure, Trev, and the needle goes either way, depending on which player you're talking about. So if we take young Sepp Vandenberg, the needle goes down. Well, what we mean by that is Liverpool have set a 20 million fee as a starting point. They know realistically, as quite a few patch journos have said, they're not going to get 20 million, in all honesty, but it's a good starting point for negotiations, isn't it? Now, as James Pearce and a few others have said, Mainz are very interested in making that move permanent. Just delete that one completely of any chance in hell of happening, Trev. And the reason I'm saying that, Mainz finished just outside the relegation places. They just stayed up in Bundesliga. Sepp doesn't want to go there. You look at the calibre of clubs that we know are interested in him, looking at him. He wants to go to a higher club. That's pretty straightforward. It was a good launch pad, stepping stone, whatever terminology you want to use for him. At the same time, Trev, just to give you an idea of fee and what Mainz can afford, their transfer record, €8 million. So we're talking about, what, 6.5 million if you get a good offer at Tesco type of thing. So they're not going to treble it, are they? Do you know what I mean? To get Vandenberg. That one permanent. It's lovely to have. And Mainz have got this idea we'd love to keep it. Well, I'd love Scarlett Johansson to chap on the front door, Chad, but it's just not going to happen, is it? Just delete that possibility completely. Forget that one. On the other side, Kelleher, 20 million was quoted by David Lynch. Now, he clarified this on our chat today. That isn't like we were looking for 20 million. That's where they said north of 20 million, i.e., start going to 25, start going towards 30. That is what Liverpool are looking for on this. There's no cheap knockoffs anymore, especially with Eddie back in the door, Richard Hughes and all those. It looks like we're standing quite firm on this type of thing. So Liverpool are looking for sort of, get your figures right, more in the region, people of 25 million for Kelleher. And to be fair, I get it, Trev. How good was he when he came in? I know he's a number 2, but he had that experience of being the number 1 for an elongated period. He did well. He's an international. He's got Premier League experience. He's at a good age for a goalkeeper specifically as well. And if you look at the market, when James Trafford is being linked with Newcastle for something like £20 million, you can fully understand why they put that marker down and said, right, that's the yardstick then. We want 25 for Queeve. So 20 million to the mark. It goes down for Sepp when someone will pay it, and it goes up for Queeve when someone will pay it.
Interesting. And it sounds as if the club are thinking they might have around about 40 million quid's worth of assets between the two. Whether or not that's realised is, of course, something else entirely. And, the little caveat here is I think an awful lot of us would love to see Kelleher continue But of course, and as Jan Mulby said on the show with me last week, I mean, what else was Kelleher going to say except what he said? You're not going to have him say at this stage that he thinks he's fine being a backup for the rest of his life. He's too young to be saying things like that for sure. But I do get the feeling, a bit like yourself, that he is off. And I think, obviously, Vandenberg is off as well. So it would be interesting to see if a real kind of early, I guess, measure of the new regime as to whether or not they can squeeze these kind of figures out of clubs who are desperate for a kid in that particular bracket, or a mid-20-year-old in that particular bracket. Again, the local journalists have been out pouring some cold water on some very passionate hopes and dreams recently. A lot of the names that we have been seeing, Varela, Ederson, Inacio, these are all names that have excited Liverpool fans in terms of the links with them. But it is increasingly seeming, Dave, just judging at least by the way that briefing is too strong a word, but the way the messaging is coming from the local journalists, it doesn't seem as if these ones are actually going to be likely. Am I wrong there? Am I reading too much into the negativity?
Nah, I think you're right. Usually, I think this distinction gets lost, Trev, especially with the way that people read Pat's journals reporting. And this isn't a dig at the Pat's journals. It's more, I think, the way people interpret it from an odd aggregator line or whatever it is. The Pat's journals will usually be clear when they're saying, listen, we've spoken to our, we've asked the club, we've asked our sources, whatever you want to call it, and they're saying there's no chance. I mean, that's pretty distinct, isn't it, that phrasing, Trev? There's nothing you can really take from it. Sometimes the club will be a bit elusive, maybe that's the right phrase of what they say, but sometimes obviously the sources come back and say, no, there's no chance this player is not on the list, like, forget it type of job. So that they're only going to report what they're told. And we're in this pattern, aren't we, at the moment? Foreign journo names the player Liverpool fans would like as a target for Liverpool, or foreign journo names a player as, in talks, there's going to be an imminent bid, or these types of things. Whips up a frenzy. People get excited on Twitter. And it doesn't matter what the journo's called, does it, Trev? And, it could be dubbed Slobodon from wherever. All of a sudden, he's tier one, isn't he? Because he reported the player you wanted to sign for Liverpool type of thing. And I'm going tongue-in-cheek here, don't get me wrong. But what happens then is those Pat's journals will naturally be, okay, let's speak to our sources. What's the crack? And naturally, it comes back like, no, Inacio is not on the list. No, there is nothing imminent with Ederson. Whether we like it or not, the Pat's journals can only report what they're told. I don't know what people might like Pat's journals. Not that's up to them. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but still, it bemuses me when people get upset that the Pat's journals ask and report the answer they were told. What do you want them to do? Yeah, just lie. He's imminent. He's going to walk through the AXA any second. Like, there's only so much you can do, but it does seem we could be setting up for a summer of guess who, shit on your chips type of thing. As links come, and Pat's journo shoot them down one by one.
Well, that's it. It's hard not to lean into a little bit of the whole bad news, whoever it happens to be, phenomenon, because we're all used to it. It's not as if we don't have a long track record of getting excited about these links that are coming from different corners, and then one of the local boys comes up and go, yeah, not going to happen, lads. And, it's understandable the fans react to the person in the moment, I guess. Understandable, maybe is the wrong word, but you can see why it happens. The logic of it is obviously daft. As you say, what are these guys supposed to do? They can only report the information that they have. And what did it say? They do the opposite. Say they take a flyer on making the people happy. And they say, oh, well, there's every chance, who knows? They're just making themselves a hostage to fortune. They're going to look ridiculous. And if they have actual information, or at least if they have what the club are telling, whether it's truth or lies, Dave, whether the club indeed are perhaps, being very, very close to the chest with their information or not, we can't guarantee that the local lads get the absolute truth. They could be getting smoke screens too. So right. I think people have to have a little bit of patience around that for sure. The next story, the exciting story is in relation to the potential for a signing. Now, unfortunately, I do believe that the guy who you've mentioned here is one of the ones who has possibly been dismissed by one of these locals. Mm. But you do have a story for us, which I think will prick up the ears of a lot of people, about a project forward. Explain, first of all, for people who mightn't be familiar with the term, what that is, and then who it might be and why.
Yeah, when I'm using that terminology, it's meant I'm not the only one, but I think when people are looking for forwards to come into Liverpool, Trev, quite often they'll want the proven article, won't they? The one who, has got a massive record, a marquee name, if you want to call it that. Whereas that's not really how we work, is it, to be honest? We'll usually bring, as the saying goes, a project forward. That's what Michael Edwards has specialised in. And, you can put people in those brackets at the time, like a Sadio Mane, like a Diogo Jota, someone who we think can go to the next level, but you get him at a right price. That's what Liverpool have done, isn't it, Trev? There's nothing wrong with saying that. Always had that sweet spot, somewhere between 30, 40 million, maybe a little bit more. That's where we've operated. That's absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with that. So that's where the names are coming from. I mean, Yakuba Minteh is the interesting one, isn't he? Came out on Friday night via the Telegraph. Luke Edwards, he's very much a Newcastle journalist, so that's important to say. He said, they may be looking to sell him because of their FFP, PSR issues, and mentioned a figure of 40 million. Within 24 hours, Sky Sports and various other outlets have got that down to 25 million all of a sudden. So it's come down very quickly. But importantly, both have mentioned Liverpool as a possible option. So it's an interesting one. And actually you start asking around, is there anything in this?
The delicious ice-cold taste of Dr. Pepper has a lasting effect on people. Lindsay from Sacramento said,
Pro tip, 40 degrees is the perfect temperature for an ice-cold Dr. Pepper.
Why is 40 degrees the perfect temperature for Dr. Pepper? We brought in Sue from Duluth, Minnesota to tell us.
Oh, yeah, I know a thing or two about cold. Oh, that right there is the perfect kind of ice-cold for Dr. Pepper. I'd share that with my friend Nancy. She likes Dr. Pepper, too, My coldest...
All right, that'll be all, Sue. Having a perfect temperature for your Dr. Pepper? It's a Pepper thing. Inspired by real fan posts.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This is where I want to be completely honest about that. We ask around like we do, Trev. We ask around. Someone said, no, got anything in it. However, one journalist said it is a player that we have looked at, we are aware of. This is where you've got to be careful, because it's easy now to throw up links. Like, he played for Feyenoord, didn't he, on loan from Newcastle, so he's slots man and all this. Feyenoord to Liverpool is the biggest jump in the world. It's absolutely massive. Let's not pretend that for anything that it isn't. It's a huge jump, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. However, this kid does tick a lot of boxes. The left-footed right winger, the pace, the ability to beat a man, and also things like his stats. They profile quite well, although people are going to be screaming, Eredivisie, and I get all that, so it's a tough one. Probably the one that does, I don't know, excites the wrong word, but is of more interest, is a player was linked. He kind of didn't get much fanfare because of who he is. And I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, but I will do throughout the summer. Dario Osorio, FC Midtjylland in Denmark. He apparently is a forward that Liverpool have definitely looked at. There were a few links to Liverpool. Now, that's not going to excite people for around 7 to 8 million euros, is it, Trev? That's just the nature of the land, and I get all that type of thing. However, it's interesting we're starting to get linked with these type of varying levels of project forwards. And we even had Mbuemo, mentioned the other week, didn't we? That this left-footed right winger does seem to keep coming up a bit, whatever anyone thinks of that. But Osorio was very much like, so to be fair, I got more on him than I did on Day, I have to be honest on that. But the interesting thing is, that feels like a multi-club model signing, if that makes sense. If we bought someone like Osorio for 7-8 million, you'd put him at the second club with the idea of, can he make it to Liverpool in a year's time or whenever that is? And also, if he doesn't quite make that level, you can still turn him over for a good profit, like a house flip renovation type of thing in the nicest way. So, yeah, something on Osorio, definitely. Minte, mixed, can't lie about that. And I've seen reports like you said, Ian Doyle reported, didn't he, that there's nothing in that. So we'll have to see. But it's just interesting. You think of other players we've been linked with. And Buemo, you could argue, Project Ford, you could argue, is he the ready-made thing? People can debate that. But it's not necessarily the big-name marquee ready-made that's coming out, is it, Trev? It seems to be a bit more of a project forward feel at the moment, anyway.
Well, if you look at two recent forward recruits, you look at Nunes and you look at Diaz, and neither of them were cheap. Diaz doesn't fit in that project forward sort of bracket because it was a good chunk of change, and Nunes clearly doesn't. So you can probably understand if this is a whole new broom sweeping clean type thing, that they will be kind of like the antithesis of what we're going to do from now on. So as you say, back to more the, like, check the numbers, check the profiles, do your homework and get a guy who we think is going to map onto the Liverpool team properly in the future. That's partially very exciting, of course, because if we have a hit rate like we did with the likes of Mane and a couple more of those kind of guys, that would be wonderful. But you can, again, in an atmosphere where there's a lot of uncertainty with a new manager starting, I think a lot of people would be quite hungry for at least one high-profile signing. Now, all we know is that we probably are likely to have at least one high-profile exit, and the most likely is that guy I've just mentioned, Luis Diaz. We've been hearing for ages from Papa Diaz about how he'd like to go elsewhere and how he really likes Barca and so on and so forth. Are we any further down the road in terms of any concrete link? I know there's been a lot of chat coming out of Barcelona Football Club lately on the back of a couple of little bits and bobs. Have we heard anything more there, or is there anything stronger with the PSG rumours we heard? And also, I think you've got some Tyler Morton news for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Diaz. We might speak to a journo that was at Barcelona's kind of, I suppose you call it their AGM, because they have it after the season, don't they, where they've got that unique setup like Spanish clubs do. Laporta's a president, they can be elected and removed, all those types of things.
I don't need a VPN, I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
So they give their summary, and we'll come to some of the things he said. But the real interesting thing that journo, and one's public rather than what the journo said, Laporta came out, Trev, and said they're looking for 2 players this summer. One of them is a winger. So that didn't quiet the Diaz links at all, did it? And then speaking to this journo, that he said the two names that are consistently coming up, and they came up at this kind of AGM, the meeting, whatever you want to call it, that Barca are looking at, it's between two. It's between Nico Williams, the Bilbao, the Spanish international younger winger, and Luis Diaz. Those are the two wingers specifically that Barcelona are looking at. And funnily enough, Trev, there's stories galore through various outlets. I'm not going to try and butcher their pronunciation, but very much, especially in terms of as this journal said, a lot of the Catalonian newspapers, the sports reporting, Diaz's name does keep coming up time and time again. So until something happens with this, one way or the other, this league, you feel, is going to rumble on. But it does feel there is a fair bit of smoke, and my toes are getting toasty on this, put it that way, is what I'd say. And then Tyler Morton, as you mentioned, an interesting one, because people wonder what's going to happen. There's been talk that Slot will assess those type of players over pre-season. The only real steer we've got on it is he is a player that Southampton specifically have asked about. And this isn't something brand new, because when Liverpool were in talks with Romeo Lavia, or around Romeo Lavia last summer, which never happened, thank God, coming to Anfield, Southampton did ask about Tyler Morton as part of the package. Now, naturally, they've just come up to the Premier League, haven't they? They've got Taylor Hardwood-Bells from City on a permanent. So it does feel like if that's to happen, I have no idea about price, I'm not going to lie about that for one sec, but it does feel that could be almost a good move for all parties, shall we say. So Tyler Morton wants to keep an eye on. As to Barca, want to keep an eye on as well. So yeah, there's definitely stuff brewing. It's just when and if it happens.
Now, I'm just marking your cards because later on, one of the stories you've lined up for us is the fact that there are 6 clubs who are in a position whereby they need to start cashing in on some assets by the end of June to comply with profit and sustainability rules. So I am going to be asking you, of those 6 clubs, if there's anyone who's jumping out at you by way of members of those squads that you'd be eyeing greedily for Liverpool. We'll include that just to bring it round to the Reds again in the middle of our Premier League section in a second. But before we finish with Liverpool, is there anything else doing the rounds that you've heard of? Not necessarily anything tangible, like, for example, any further news on Joe Gomez?
No, it does seem quiet. I mean, it does seem almost eerily quiet a little bit, because as we start to move into the window opening and things like that, the window is set to open with 3 key players with 12 months left to go on the contract. The window is set to open with Ibu Konate into his last 2 years of his contract, Trev, that type of thing. And obviously these players are away with their countries, etc., so that makes things a little bit more difficult. You kind of hope by this time next week, and there's no guarantee as I'm saying this, and it might still rumble on further because Slot might still be on holiday, all these types of things as well, but you wouldn't mind just getting a bit of a positive sniff of something, shall we say, next week. But there is a little bit of eerie silence to it, I think it's fair to say, at the moment.
I think you're right, and I think that's as far as I'd go with it. I think you've put it really well there. I think everyone will be just looking for a little bit of a, like you say, a sniff, just a reassuring little pat on the head about 1 or 2 of our beloved Reds that we know at least they're going to be staying, or these ones are, potentially up for talk. So we have some information. I think that's probably what's tormenting people most. Like I say, we'll try and stir it around to Liverpool anytime we can in the remainder of the show, but we do need to look around elsewhere because there are things going on, and as I mentioned before, there's probably very strong circumstances which will ensure that things have to go on quite soon. But we'll start with City, because this has been it's been a source, I think, of real irritation, annoyance, indignation for a lot of people, as we had to watch this story about the City deciding to sue the Premier League. And we saw certain clubs lining up with them, certain clubs lining up against them. We are aware of rumours that perhaps Guardiola is going to finish at the end of next season. De Bruyne is talking about Saudi as if it's like some sort of Hollywood land of money that he can go and worry about his family's future, I think was the gist of it. I'm finding all of this quite interesting, and a lot of people, I believe still, in my heart and soul, Dave, I don't know where you are on this. I don't think we've ever really had this chat properly, but I believe in my heart and soul that it's just going to be fines and that type of thing. I don't see these relegations that people are talking about. I just don't see it. And I think the fact that they've come so hard in opposition ahead of anything else happening is fair indicator that, you know, it's basically them saying, hey, we've got the best lawyers, so what are you going to do about it? It just seems like brinkmanship. And as a result, I have very little faith that this big sort of collapse that a lot of people are envisaging for City, I don't see that being the case at all. I don't see them going anywhere fast. But there are some bits of circumstantial evidence that are starting to line up there, and you can understand why it would fuel a conspiracy theory that it's all going to go to pot at the end of next season. Let's see how that works out. But what can you tell us about this story about City suing the Premier League? Because a lot of people will have heard that, winced and stuck their fingers in their ears because they don't want to really think about how obnoxious this lot are any more than they already have had to. And it's kind of the last straw for a lot of people. I've seen it really mess with people's head during the week. What do you make of all this? And what can you tell us about it?
In the quiet words of St. Francis of Assisi, struggle yourself in, fuckers, because the Premier League landscape is about to just go. This is insane, Trev. Officially, and I'll say officially because it's on paper, the Premier League's most successful commercial team, officially on paper, Premier League's most successful global team in terms of the business and the growth of value, are suing the Premier League because the associated party transaction rules are unfair. And as you've heard the phrase, Trev, it's all the making of the majority tyrant and their evil empire, isn't it? Type of thing. So, yeah, that club that's won 6 of the last 7 Premier Leagues, apparently again, 115 as the most successful commercial team and everything, are saying the rules are ridiculous and unfair. And quite rightly, most of football's lined up against them to say this is ridiculous. Look at what you're saying, all these types of things. And there's a few clubs suggested as being behind them, but it's interesting the likes of Newcastle, etc., have not come out. There's no backing. But the case starts this week, doesn't it? So we'll get more of an insight on that. So what happens there? For that bit you asked me, absolutely zero belief anything will happen serious. We'll be talking, like you said, fines. The governments are involved, Trev, just to be clear, if anyone's not, unsure about that. Governments are involved in this on both sides. So that probably tells me it ain't going anywhere. De Bruyne, like you said, interested this talk. He wants a new contract from City, but whether that's the motivation or not, comes out and talks, like you said, about Saudi. It's the first real player we've had this summer talk in that depth to say, well, what are you talking about? Why would I dismiss this? I can play in Saudi for 2 years and set up my grandkids' with the wealth and everything that I offer. So I have to seriously consider it, just to add to the moral standpoint that Manchester City have, etc. So that works well. Ederson, those links for him to depart and go to Saudi are still there. And it's interesting, we've talked about that for the last few weeks. Ortega, their backup keeper, who was officially expected to leave this summer, has now signed a contract extension at the club, Trev, which doesn't necessarily mean it's they're correlated, but it just makes you wonder, hold on, does that add more weight to the Ederson stories that way? On the other side, Alvarez, that centre forward, you could argue he's Haaland's backup, but he is he's a top player anyway, isn't he? He's a World Cup winner, plays up front for Argentina, bagged a lot of goals. As his agents, have been talking to City, he wants to play more, wants more game time. And funnily enough, as that story comes out, so do ones that PSG are interested in the player, Atletico Madrid are interested in the player. And then, interestingly on that, the Atletico Madrid president actually comes out and says, yes, we very much like the player. However, with his wages and the whole scenario, ain't going to happen. In fact, we suspect he'll stay at City as it is, because there's only the likes of City are paying 200 grand plus for backups, essentially. And that's not diminishing the player. That's just reflecting more on City's squad that way as well, Trev. So, and that's where we haven't even talked about Pep, so to speak, but there's a lot going on at Manchester City, and in the nicest way, this case, if, and I don't think they will, just to be clear, but I can't prove, we'll find out what happens. If City win this somehow, this throws the whole football landscape into disarray beyond belief. Because then, that's the Premier League being told your sponsorship rules and everything are unfair, so you're going to have to review them. It also then brings into account this whole 115 charges situation, because a lot of the charges are based on those types of rules. So if they're defined as illegal and whatever, whenever the official judgment will be, the whole thing just gets thrown into chaos. And that's without our absolute clown of a vice president talking about playing games abroad and stuff like this. It just feels that this case at Manchester City are just stirring up everything a little bit at the moment, doesn't it, Trev?
Yeah, the unbridled arrogance, Dave, of talking and using language like the tyranny of the majority. I mean, what the hell? Every time I think about that, it makes my blood run cold. It's unbridled arrogance is what it is. And, that act of aggression from them, it's so perfect. It fits perfectly. Of course they're going to do that. Of course they're going to do that.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
Sports Social Podcast Network.